Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, lawmakers urging Vice President Leni Robredo to reveal her plans as anti-drug czar.
Maraming hahabulin as far as data is concerned. But perhaps in the next few weeks or so, mas klaro na lahat.
But the Vice President camp calls it premature.
Obviously, she will go. But my only, I suppose, the only thing I can say at this point is it would be premature to ask her, barely a week into her job, to give, the full outline, the full comprehensive list of her plans.
Also allowing the Vice President to join illegal drug operations.
Pwedeng challenge ko sa inyo, ma'am, para at least makita nyo rin kung paano nagtatrabaho yung mga ating law enforcers sa baba.
Maraming salamat, General. Gusto ko yan.
And pushing for body cameras for law enforcement officers.
In general, it's a good idea, but you have to look at the science.
Representatives Ruffy Biazon and Elpidio Barzaga Jr. join us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. Lawmakers say they want Vice President Leni Robredo to appear at the House of Representatives and share her strategy to curb illegal drugs. They insist there will be no grilling and will extend the utmost courtesy to the Vice President. The House Committee on Dangerous Drugs also adds that they will offer suggestions on improving the drug war. They also want to know if any legislation is needed to carry out the Vice President's plans. Also, will body cameras for law enforcement officers finally solve controversies surrounding the war on drugs? Let's go straight to the sources of the story. Muntinlupa Representative Ruffy Biazon and Cavite Representative Elpidio Barzaga Jr. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Morning.
Thank you.
All right, let's start with Oplan Tokhang, the drug czar, anti-drug czar. Vice President Leni Robredo wants possibly scrap Oplan Tokhang. Do you agree?
Well, you can't let go of law enforcement operations. So possibly tweaking could be done based on the ideas of the Vice President.
What about the name? What about changing that name itself?
But that could be part of a refreshing of the campaign, which I think is needed. Not just for the anti-drug campaign. In any plan, after a while, you need to make adjustments.
So, but is it time to change the name Oplan Tokhang?
Probably.
Congressman, what about you?
Well, I think because the connotation of Oplan Tokhang, insofar as ordinary people are concerned, that would be extrajudicial or summary killing, which would be in violation of our constitutional rights and liberties. But we have to consider in the enforcement, for example, of search warrants or even warrants of arrest, there might be confrontation between the authorities and the persons to be arrested or to be searched. And in that particular case, we cannot blame the police authorities if in the course of the encounter, people, even innocent bystanders, might be killed. So that is actually different from Operation Tokhang.
You know, when you talk about that Oplan Tokhang, what it is really, it's supposed to be katok and appealing to them to surrender. However, to some people, that's had a negative connotation because of the thousands of deaths. Vice President Leni Robredo, the anti-drug czar, was saying, let's refocus somehow, not on the possible small time, but let's look into the drug lords and the policemen, the scalawag policemen, the recycling of drugs, etc. Even the NCRPO chief, General de Bolsinas, was saying, parang in essence, gentlemen, sinasabi niya, sayang kapag dito lang tayo sa small time, let's refocus our actions and intentions on the drug lords. Let's go back to that interview with General de Bolsinas.
We have to put more people in these operations. Kasi this is the priority of our president and our government. Therefore, we give more people there. Focus more on the source. Pwede ka manghuli ng mga ganon na isa, dalawang sachet, but wag naman na buong buwan mo, yun lang lahat. Diba? It is to impact. Ang pagod, ang expenses, ang file ng kaso, ganon din.
Do you agree?
Yes, of course. the less supply of shabu in the market, then there will be less users.
I've been saying that even before, ever since. We have two comparisons, the PDEA and the PNP. If you look back on the accomplishments of both agencies, you will notice that there is a difference. In general, PDEA always comes up with big hauls. They get in the tens of kilos, even to the hundreds of kilos. They get to high-value targets. You get the buy-bust inside condominiums, factories. Villages.
Exclusive ones at that, yeah.
And they have living suspects, enough to be prosecuted. While if we look at the record of the PNP, it's all about sachets and dead bodies.
A 38 caliber
So it is
pistol.
really possible for us to target the high-value personalities.
Why the disconnect, Congressman, between the PNP and the PDEA?
Well, I would say it's innate in the PNP to do the small-time operations because really they are on the ground. That's their role. The PDEA was designed, was patterned after the USDEA, and they received training from the USDEA. So their mode of operation is quite different.
Congressman, where do you think and where do you suggest the Vice President begin in her anti-drug czar position?
Well, if I were in her place, of course I'm not. Well, of course, I have to look at the immediate solution to the problems and of course the long-term solutions. Because people are expecting that within the next few months, there will be results with regard to her appointment as co-chair of the ICAD.
So she needs to do short-term first, sir. She needs to focus on short-term.
Yes.
Because all eyes are on her.
Yes, definitely. Of course, there are certain things which she has to learn. Joining, for example, in drug operations, I don't think that would be a good advice to the Vice President because she would be risking her lives. And we have seen that even commanders, generals, do not go to the forefront of the battle.
So you don't believe what PDEA Chief Aaron Aquino was saying? Para maintindihan mo, ma'am, I challenge you, sumama ka sa amin.
Well, ang aking suggestion dyan, she goes after the fact, after the arrest, after the service of the warrant, so she can see what actually happened, ano naging inventaryo, she can interview witnesses, the barangay officials, how was the search warrant was served, was there a legitimate encounter?
Post-operation.
Post-operation.
What about you, Congressman Ruffy Biazon?
Well, see, Vice President cannot veer away from the Philippine anti-illegal drug strategy. There is such a thing, adopted by the ICAD, based on Executive Order 66 by the President. So she has to operate within the strategy already adopted by government. After all, she is bound to it because her appointment is to be a co-chair of the ICAD. And the ICAD is mandated to follow the strategy. So good thing about it is that the strategy is broad-based. It looks at enforcement and it looks at the drug problem as a health issue, which is one of the things that Vice President is saying.
She's espousing that, actually.
Yes,
Yeah, let's look
and
into
it
the
is
health
in the
issue.
strategy. So perhaps this is just an idea, no? As co-chair, they can divide between themselves, Chair Aaron Aquino and the Vice President, the different aspects of the drug strategy.
Right. Because in fact, in the ICAD, there are 20 agencies under the ICAD that have 4 different clusters. Meron yung law enforcement, meron yung health, justice, etc. So you're saying that at some point, maybe, sir,
Yes.
Aquino, DG Aquino can look into focus on law enforcement. And where should the Vice President
I
focus?
think all the other clusters is falling within her line of thinking on how to do the drug campaign.
She met with an official of the United Nations Office on Drugs yesterday, I believe, and also she's about to meet with some U.S. officials. Why? She wants to look into best practices. Is this a step in the right direction, Congressman Biazon?
Well, again, it is part of the strategy. International engagement and regional cooperation is within the strategy, and even adhering to international agreements such as UN agreements. And looking at the best practices, yes, I think. Like, for example, I came from a study tour in the U.S. on how they do counterterrorism and anti-narcotics.
Yeah.
They opened our eyes to a tool that they have successfully used in prosecuting suspects, and that is the
Which is?
single-party recording.
Which you filed a bill.
Yes, I have a bill on that.
We're going to talk about that. Also, the use of body cameras.
Body
But before
cameras.
that, before we go on a break, Congressman Barzaga, tama ho ba na nakikipag-usap si Vice President sa UN at makikipag-usap rin sa ilang officials of other countries to find out best practices?
we are a community of nations, and sharing information and good practices among or between countries is practically being practiced by all nations.
All right.
As a matter of fact, if we have drug lords going in another country, the host country is sharing information to us, which led to their arrest. So that's normal.
How would you describe the government's war on drugs? Congressman Biazon.
Well, it's determined. That's how I could describe
Determined.
it. Yeah.
Okay, on how? Could you specify further?
Well, the resources that are being put into doing operations against it. Okay. The adoption of a strategy that is on paper.
Yeah.
And as I went over the strategy, it covers all grounds.
So is government doing a good job?
Well, the targets, I think, have not really been met. As mentioned by the chief PNP, I think it was, and even the president. So we need a refresh, I think.
Okay.
And this is about time to do that.
Congressman Barzaga, what about you? How is the government's war on drugs? Are you satisfied with it so far?
Well, let's lay the basis. I have been always saying that insofar as the drug problem is concerned, there is no definite, there is no concrete solution, unlike the problems which we are facing. In order to solve the drug problem, there must be cooperation, not only among government agencies, not only among the several branches of the government, but most especially by our own people. As I have been always stating, everything starts from the family, and assuming that we have a responsible family, in all likelihood, the drug problem will be minimized.
Is government doing a good job?
Well,
in the
I think
war
so.
on drugs?
I think
Yes.
so, but we cannot expect that there will be zero drug dependency insofar as the actions of the government is concerned. This will be never ending. There will be improvement, but to solve it and eradicate it completely would be merely an impossible dream.
Body cameras, is it about time that police officers use this? Congressman Ruffy Biazon filed this bill, I think as far back as 2016 or 2017.
Yes,
We'll be
2016.
talking about that after the break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Muntinlupa Representative Ruffy Biazon and Cavite Representative Elpidio Barzaga Jr. Before I leave that topic on international help, there is that Iceland resolution adopted by a majority of countries wanting to look into the human rights situation in the country because of the war on drugs. How do you reconcile the Vice President meeting with an official of the UN crime and drugs and this resolution to look into the human rights situation in the country?
Well, for me, her consultation with the UN body on crime and drugs is appropriate because she can pick up strategies that we can use. With the concern on human rights, I think the Vice President is also in a position now to handle that issue even without outside help.
How?
Her position she was appointed into the ICAD. And I'll go again to the anti-drug strategy. Part of it is ensuring accountability. It's stated there. If I may read, ensuring accountability, the implementing agencies will be required to demonstrate relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability of the resources provided to them, and support evidence-based decision-making, etc., etc. So, being part of the ICAD as co-chair, she can take on that role of ensuring accountability in the operations.
Let's lay that
to
premise
ensure
down.
that there are no human rights violations.
Okay, but laying the premise again there is Congressman Ruffy talking about a strategy, an anti-drug strategy adopted, formed by the Duterte administration that is supposed to be adopted by the ICAD.
Yes.
That's what you were even telling me even before we went on the show, that
Yes.
there's a strategy already in place that possibly needs to be, well, not possibly, that needs to be adhered to and followed. Congressman, what about you? Is there a problem with looking into the human rights situation in the country and then the Vice President looking for best practices from an official of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime?
Well, if the discussion between the Vice President and the UN would be the resolution pertaining to investigation about extrajudicial killings in the Philippines, firstly, the Vice President can ask, what are the things for which you made this conclusion to have an examination or an inspection or a review of the alleged extrajudicial killing in the Philippines? And secondly, that will be also an opportunity on her part to present the side of the Philippine government.
All right. So you see it as a good thing. Let's talk about budget. You have the Vice President saying that the ICAD, I think, has a budget of 15 million. Is that so? Is that adequate?
Well, the budget is just for the operations of the body, the interagency. It's an interagency body overseeing operations of other agencies. So if we're talking about the campaign against illegal drugs, it's not just the budget of the ICAD. The PNP has its own, PDEA has its own, etc.
And PDEA's budget slashed by what?
Well, they were asking for, I forgot the amount, but they were asking for the activation of 1,000 additional agents. Unfortunately, it was not included in the budget proposal.
Parang kulang nga daw yung budget ng PDEA, gentlemen. So, okay, 15 million, is that adequate? I know what you're saying, sir, that meron naman budget ng PNP, Justice, etc., Health. But in the organization of the ICAD, Congressman, sapat ho ba yung 15 million?
Well, theoretically, it is an interagency which is required under the law only to oversee the operations. But what we have seen and read in the newspaper is that the Vice President wants to take a very active role insofar as enforcement is concerned. And therefore, if that would be the role of the Vice President, definitely that amount of 15 million would be insufficient.
Opo, kulang.
Kulang.
Okay. Also, another point, to you both, I wanted to find out, are you confused or do you have a big question mark on the number of deaths? Why? You have the PNP saying that more or less, let's peg it at 5,000 deaths since the war on drugs. You have international organization and other groups saying it's more than 5,000 deaths. It's 11,000, possibly going up to 30,000. Do you have a number that you can share with us that you believe in terms of the war on drug deaths?
Well, it's difficult for me to say what I can believe in. I can just rely on official figures. Of course, what the Congress relies on is the figures submitted by the law enforcement agencies. Personally, I don't have a way to verify it.
Right.
And they have certain definitions on which qualifies as death related to the drug operation, etc., etc.
Deaths under investigation. So the tendency, of course, is to believe the law enforcement officers.
We can just rely on that. As far as I'm concerned, I can just rely on those figures.
Yeah, Congressman, what about you?
Well, I have the same position. We have to admit the statements as well as the statistics being given by the PNP rather than rely on those organizations who are not within the Philippines, have not actually seen the actual operations regarding the drug problem.
Would you have a tendency to believe that the PNP would undervalue or underestimate the number of deaths?
Well, I assume that they are performing their duties regularly, and therefore whatever figures they would give to us would be completely accurate unless rebutted.
Congressman Biazon?
Yeah, that's how we look at it, looking at it from the perspective of official figures.
All right, I want to talk about body cameras now. This is a bill filed by Congressman. It's the body camera bill. Is it called the body cam bill? You filed this back in 2016?
Back in 2016,
Okay.
August of 2016.
And obviously, it hasn't been passed. What exactly, how big is a body camera? And how effective is this? Yeah, I'm going to bring that up, Congressman, kasi kausap ko si Speaker Cayetano, and he wasn't keen on this. Explain this first to us, sir.
Probably it's about 2 2 by 3 inches big.
Okay, so it's much smaller than a cell phone.
It's a smaller, it's
Maybe
a bit
half of
thicker.
this.
Yeah, it's thicker, but it's
Okay.
smaller. So yeah, we have some photos there. It's in use in other countries, especially in the United States by law enforcers. And,
This is the PDEA body cams, I think. Okay.
yeah, so I filed the bill because it provides an objective witness to what goes on in an operation. It's not just for protection of the subject of the operation, it's also for the protection of the law enforcer.
Correct.
Because
It serves both.
It will show what he did. No? Mawawala yung false accusation against them.
Why is it not passed? Why are you not guys passing this bill?
Well, the trouble is that we have so many bills which we have passed, approved on third reading in the House. Unfortunately, in the Senate, we have only 24 senators. And in most cases, the bills, as approved by the House, were not properly acted upon or were not deliberated upon by the Senate.
Was it approved in the House already?
No, it wasn't even approved at the committee level.
So then you have there's no
May I
basis.
also add that I just have read in the newspaper today that the PNP has already allowed the bidding of 35 million worth of body cams.
Right. And also, may I add that the PNP OIC was also saying that naantala yung pagbili ng body cameras because some officers... Go ahead, sir.
Some officers are asking 5 million pesos.
5 million as bribe for the 300 cameras worth, I forget
The
how
300
much.
plus million worth.
365.
Yeah,
365 million pesos worth of body cameras, sana, for the PNP. But apparently, there were officers in the Bids and Awards Committee that was asking for a 5 million peso bribe.
During the previous Congress, when we were pushing for the bill, initially the PNP was against it. The chief PNP Bato at that time,
Ayaw niya.
he had a firm stance against it. But then when the death of Kian
De Los Santos.
De Los Santos was hot topic, he eventually agreed. Then they suddenly came up with a budget of 300 plus million.
Yeah.
And I was saying that we shouldn't rush into it. Although I'm pushing for the bill,
Yeah.
you shouldn't rush into going out and buying cameras. Because at the time when I asked them what is included in the budget for purchase, they said just cameras. And I said, you need a whole system for a body cam operation. You need a digital storage, archiving. You need rules and regulations on how to use it,
Right.
etc., etc.
Don't think you're just buying.
And they
an
just went ahead and
equipment.
procured. And now we have this issue of alleged anomalies.
Alleged bribe, asking for a 5 million bribe. Before we go on a break, I just want to bring this in. Speaker Alan Cayetano, not keen on body cameras. Why? Let's listen.
Usually not in drug war. Ang mas okay pa sa kanila, may kasamang media na trained na may camera. But yung actual
Hindi
na
mo gusto
isa-isa...
yun? You're not in favor of that?
I think we should study it more. In general, it's a good idea. But you have to look at the science. You have to look. Does the DEA do it, the Drug Enforcement Agency of the U.S.? Does the FBI do it? Does the police do it? Because nga, may science yan eh.
I'm going to ask Congressman Biazon to answer that. Does the DEA, FBI use this?
Yes, they do. I just came from that study tour in the U.S. And the good thing about our study tour is that we interviewed and we talked to frontline operators, agents. We talked to higher level law enforcers. We talked to prosecutors, and we even talked to judges. And we even witnessed one court proceeding involving the issue on body cameras.
Maybe you should speak to the speaker, sir.
Well, I wrote to him with regard to the position that he mentioned.
Up next, all right, drug testing among congressmen. We'll be talking about that after the break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Muntinlupa Representative Ruffy Biazon and Cavite Representative Elpidio Barzaga Jr. Last 2 minutes, drug test among congressmen. Do you agree?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Yes.
This is your idea, sir, hindi ho ba?
Yes.
What, random, voluntary, what are your plans?
Well, my plan is that it should be a random, voluntary drug testing. Because, number one, we cannot impose it as mandatory because it is not provided in our own rules. Secondly,
Can't you just fix your rules, amend your rules, sir?
yes, we can fix it. The rules, the proposals should come from our rules committee. And second, if it is not random, then as we know, if you will not be using drugs for 1 week and you submitted yourself to voluntary drug testing after 1 week, in all likelihood, the
It'll be
results would be negative.
So it's useless.
So it's
going
useless.
It needs to be mandatory. It needs to be a surprise
Yes.
drug test. Do you think the congressman will be amenable to this?
Well, I think because we have to show to the public that we are not drug dependents. And in the event that they would refuse, then in the coming elections, that would be an issue which might be used against them by their rivals.
Should the vice president appear before the House of Representatives as endorsed or proposed by Congressman Barber's gentleman?
For me, it's really up to her. But we would appreciate her hearing. We appreciate hearing her plans.
Well, traditionally, the president and vice president do not appear insofar as Congress is concerned, taking into consideration the dignity of office and the high position which they have. But in this particular case, insofar as VP Robredo is concerned, she accepted the position as co-chairman of a government agency under the executive department. And it is but proper that whenever it is but proper in our case, if we are really interested in solving the drug problem, her appearance would be necessary in order to find out in what way we can help. As a matter of fact, during our organizational meeting in the Committee on Drugs, all the agencies pertaining to the campaign against drug addiction, like the PDEA, the PNP, were present to give us an overall view about the drug situation in our country.
When? When is a good time to do this? To invite the vice president? She took on the post barely a week since.
Yes.
When's a good time to invite her?
When
After a
she's
month?
ready.
When she's ready. Of course, if we invited her and
When do you think is a good time? A month? 3 months?
I think the planning should be finished in 1 month at the most.
I agree with that.
Okay,
time.
1 month. All right, maraming salamat to Muntinlupa Representative Ruffy Biazon and Cavite Representative Elpidio Barzaga Jr. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.